Hi guys, my dear students. Today we are going to discuss the steps involved in the respiration. The topics which is the respiration is the most important in the human physiology. Okay, in the human physiology, if the foundation level respiration is the most important, this can be most prioritized chapter in the NEET level in the 11th and 12th standard. This is the most important. I am going to give the full information regarding the respiration. Okay, yeah. If come to the steps involved in the respiration. Okay, what are the steps involved in the respiration? What is respiration first? What is respiration? Respiration, of course, there is a oxygen which is utilized and give the energy ATP. Oxygen utilized to break down the food particle which is glucose and give the energy and CO2 as waste product and generate heat. This is the metabolic reactions which is catabolic reaction to break down the food particle in the presence of oxygen to give the energy which is ATP called respiration. Okay. The steps involved in the respiration. First step is breathing. Breathing is what? Intake of oxygen rich air, intake of oxygen rich air and take out of CO2 rich air. Call breathing. We can call inhalation. This is intake called inhalation and take out mean exhalation. Inhalation and exhalation. Take off intake of oxygen rich air and take out the carbon dioxide rich air is breathing. Okay. And what is external respiration? What is internal respiration? What is cellular respiration? Okay. We are going to discuss internal respiration, external respiration and cellular respiration is what? Okay. Who can produce oxygen? The trees can produce oxygen. Okay, in the atmosphere. In the atmosphere, the oxygen is generated. From the atmosphere, the oxygen reach lungs. From the lungs, the oxygen reach blood. From the blood, the oxygen reach tissue. Tissue generate energy ATP and CO2. So first where the oxygen start, which is lung, that is atmosphere, they can reach lungs. From the lungs they can reach blood. From the blood they can reach tissue. From the tissue they can generate ATP and CO2. This is the pathway where the oxygen produced and what the areas they can reach, the parts which is they can reach and finally reach tissue to break down food particle. In this way, these are the respiration is going to take place. Okay. So, what is the lungs role in the oxygen? Okay. Once the oxygen which reach lungs, oxygen which reach lungs from the atmosphere, there is the unit of the lungs we can call alveolus. Alveolus, finally the oxygen reach alveolus in the lungs. The blood vessels which are enter into the lungs, the blood vessels which are enter into the lungs, they can carry into the lungs the blood. Okay, the oxygen which is enter into the blood vessel, blood from the lungs, oxygen enter into the blood, blood carry the oxygen into the tissue, blood carry oxygen into the tissue. This oxygen enter into the tissue from the blood. First oxygen reach lungs, from the lungs the oxygen reach blood, from the blood the oxygen reach tissue. How many parts, how many mediums the oxygen reach here? Okay, first the exchange between the lungs mean alveolus, between the lungs plus blood. This is the first exchange, and after that from blood they can reach tissue, right? So next step is between the blood plus tissue. This is the first medium, this is the second medium. After reach tissue, the oxygen which is enter into the tissue, this is the tissue cell. What happened here? The glucose also they can reach tissue through the blood, and oxygen they can break food particle in the tissue, release ATP and CO2. This is the step 3. Okay? Yeah, just look into here. First, breathing is what? Breathing mean oxygen which is enter into the lungs. Oxygen which is enter into the lungs, breathing mean oxygen rich air enter into the lungs or carbon dioxide rich air exit from the lungs, that is breathing. After oxygen or carbon dioxide enter into the lungs, there is lungs and between there is a exchange of gas, exchange of gas between the lungs and blood, between the lungs and blood. Just look into here, just look into here, lungs and bloods. We have to take here, lungs is alveolus, alveolus, and oxygen enter into the alveolus. First oxygen enter into the alveolus, and blood vessel is there which is around the alveolus. There is a blood vessel around the alveolus which is blood vessel. The oxygen which is enter into the blood vessel from the lungs, and carbon dioxide which is exit from the blood vessel to lungs. This is exchange between the blood and lungs, lungs and blood. Okay, there is a layer which is alveolus and blood vessel. There is a layer squamous epithelial tissue. There is a tissue tissue, squamous epithelial tissue. Squamous epithelial tissue between the blood vessel and lungs, and the process called diffusion. This process called diffusion. This is called external respiration. This is called external respiration. Between the lungs and blood, we can call external respiration. The exchange of gas between the lungs and blood vessel through the diffusion, which is involve the epithelial tissue, squamous epithelial tissue between the wall of this alveolus and blood vessel. There is a epithelial tissue which is involved in this wall called diffusion. We can call it as external respiration. After reach blood, the oxygen after reach blood, that can be reach tissue, right? The exchange between the blood and tissue, the exchange between the blood and tissue like this, blood and tissue, called internal respiration, called internal respiration. And if finally they can reach tissue, there is a oxygen which is utilized to break down the food particle in the cell to call cellular respiration. Cellular respiration. Just look into here again, the steps involved in the breathing, respiration. First step breathing, second step external respiration, third step internal respiration, fourth step cellular respiration. Breathing is what? The air which is enter into the lungs. This is the lungs. Lungs mean we can take the oxygen and take out the carbon dioxide. When the oxygen enter, that can be reach blood between the medium squamous epithelial tissue. The process we can call diffusion, that is called external respiration. After reach blood, blood carry the oxygen into the tissue. Between the tissue and blood, there is a diffusion, the exchange of gases called internal respiration. This is first is the breathing, second one is lungs between the blood, is this process is called external respiration, second step. This is from the blood to tissue, this is the third internal respiration, third step. And fourth step, after reach cell, this is cell. After reach cell, the oxygen can break down the food particle which is glucose to release ATP and CO2. This is fourth step, cellular respiration. Just look into here, how many steps involve here. Okay? Steps involved in the respiration. I am going to explain you again, guys. Steps involved in the respiration. Breathing is one step, external respiration, internal respiration, and cellular respiration. External respiration, breathing is the where atmosphere produce oxygen that can be reach lungs, mean we can intake the oxygen, that is breathing, and exhale the carbon dioxide. Inhale the oxygen, exhale the carbon dioxide, that is breathing into the lungs. Once the oxygen reach lungs, they can enter into the blood through the medium which is epithelial tissue, squamous epithelial tissue, that is involved in the diffusion between the blood and lungs, called external respiration, second step. Once the oxygen rich blood that can be delivered in the tissue. Between the tissue and blood there is a internal respiration. Finally, if the rich tissue, in the tissue there is a breakdown of glucose in the presence of oxygen to release energy and carbon dioxide, we can call cellular respiration, fourth step. Got it? Breathing, external respiration, internal respiration and cellular respiration. Just look into here, breathing is you can inhale the oxygen, exhale the carbon dioxide. Once the oxygen reach lungs, they can enter into the blood finally. Mean blood can carry the oxygen into the different part of the body. So, between the blood and lungs there is a exchange of gases called external respiration. Once they can reach blood, they can deliver in the tissue, right? Between the blood and tissue we can call internal respiration. After reach tissue, tissue can utilize the oxygen to break down the food particle to release energy ATP and carbon dioxide. This is cellular respiration. These are the 4 steps involved in the respiration. This is the most important in the 10th class and as well intermediate for the NEET. Okay? Foundation, as you guys, if you want to become a doctor, you have to follow this NEET World foundation courses. Okay? We will give you the most probable, most important topic for the NEET point of view. Okay? I hope you guys understand these steps are involved in the respiration. Okay? Yeah, thank you.